Kenra permanent color. The permanent and demi-permanent both have the balancing complex 5 in them, but there is a reason to choose one over the other. Why would that be? Kenra permanent is a low ammonia, gentle, wide array of multi-dimensional tones that deliver consistent and reliable results. It has 22 tonal families and boosters and high lifts, each designed for max coverage, control, and full gray coverage. Then we have the developers. 4 dedicated developers that work directly with the pigments to ensure that you get the balancing complex 5 and all its attributes. Formulated with specific buffers and conditioners to maintain the integrity of hair and the intense shine that Kenra color gives. They may be slightly different from other developers used in other lines because they are designed specifically for Kenra colors. 10 volume is for deposit only. For example, a level 6 to a 5 BR. I would use 10 volume. 20 volume is 1 level of lift and gray coverage or tonal change. 30 volume is 2 to 3 levels of lift based on hair texture and density. The 40 volume is 3 to 4 levels of lift based on the hair texture and density as well. You can achieve 3 levels of lift with both 30 or 40 volume based on texture or density. When determining a developer, you have to make sure you know how to tell the difference between coarse or fine hair on your client. Coarse hair has a wider shaft, so it's going to hold a little bit more pigment, whereas fine hair is thinner and will not hold as much. With that being said, would you need 30 or 40 volume to move more pigment? 40 volume would be needed for 3 levels with coarse hair, but fine hair would be okay with 30. Our mixing ratio is pretty easy. It's 1:1 for the mixing ratio. The timing is 30 minutes or 40 minutes for gray coverage. Do not use any heat, accelerants, or steam so you get the full benefits of the complex 5. Now we'll go into gray coverage. What percentage of your clientele has gray coverage? A pretty big percent. Aren't you so glad that you chose Kenra because of its outstanding coverage every time? We discussed our natural ash, and natural brown series, and now we need to include one to cover gray. Let's discuss a little further how to formulate and how simple it can be. Let's start with client number 1. She's a natural level 6. She wants to be a 6 red-brown. What is the underlying pigment in that? That will be a gold orange. Let's say she has 25% gray. We would formulate with 1/2 ounce of 6N to 1 1/2 ounce of RB with 2 ounces of 20 volume. That's for 25% gray. For 50 volume, we would do 1 ounce of 6N, 1 ounce of 6RB, and 2 ounces of 20 volume to achieve maximum coverage and tone. Let's go even further and say she has 75% gray. We're going to use 1 1/2 ounce of 6N, 1/2 6RB, 2 ounces of 20 volume to maintain that tonal integrity and shine. Let's go on to client number 2. She's a little bit tougher. She is 50% gray. She is a natural level 5. She wants to be a level 8 brown, beige, and her underlying pigment is gold. We would formulate that with 1 ounce 8NA, with 1 ounce of 8B with 2 ounces of 30 volume to cut that underlying pigment and make sure she gets that nice beigey tone. Let's say a little bit of time goes on and she's 100% gray. What do? 90% requires that deposit and only 10% needs that lift. The challenge is to put that natural on to deposit and making sure that it gets that pigment drop. So we're going to drop that down to 20 volume. So our formula would be 1 and 1.5 ounces of 8N, 1/2 ounce of 8B with 2 ounces of 20 volume. So we can guarantee that that pigment gets into the hair. Each time we worked through a client that this was the format: natural level, desired level, levels of lift and deposit and or developer, the percentage of gray, and the underlying pigment. When finding the natural level, you're going to want to take the swatch book and put it onto their crown, looking for lightness, not tonal value. Why is it important to use a swatch? Next, the desired level. Identify the shade in the swatch book, pictures from Pinterest, magazines, personal pictures, to make sure you and your client are on the same page. Next, number 3, levels of lift. Identify the volume based on the amount of lift and deposit and the natural level and the percentage of gray. Next, percentage of gray. Identify the amount of natural ash, or B, needed for the formulation. And last but not least, you need to identify the underlying pigment. If you are lifting 2 or more levels, then you need to take this into consideration. When formulating, I always ask myself if the underlying pigment is going to help the end result of the color or if it needs to be neutralized. Now that we've covered the 5 steps of formulation, let's talk through a few more examples and then we'll get started on our model. Alright, so for our first example, we have a client with a natural level 6. Her desired level is in natural 9. She has 50% gray and her underlying pigment is yellow-orange. I have concluded that I'm going to use 30 volume, so my formula is going to be 2 ounces of NA to cancel out that underlying pigment with 2 ounces of 30 volume to get that lift. For our next example, our client has a natural level 4. Her desired level is a 5B. She has 0 gray and her underlying pigment is red. So I went with 2 ounces of 5B with 20 volume, 2 ounces of that as well. So she'll lift just one little tone and she'll have that nice beigey, warm color, chocolatey, that everyone likes. Our next client, number 3, is a natural level 8. Her desired level is a 7N. She has 25% gray and her underlying pigment is gold. For this one, I chose to use a 7N, 2 ounces, and a 10 volume, 2 ounces, because we're only doing 1 level of lift and she's going to a nice natural level 7. For our last but not least client, she is a natural level 7. Her desired level is a 9CG and her underlying pigment is orange. And she is 100% gray. Ooh. So in this one, I formulated it with 1 and 1/2 ounces of 9N. So she'll have that deposit of pigment mixed with 1/2 ounce of 9G. and 20 volume. So we're not trying to lift, we're just depositing that color, and 2 ounces of that.